Virginia Wine TV. Last year, DrinkLocalWine.com hosted its second annual conference here in Virginia to showcase the dynamic Virginia wine industry. This year, they'll be hosting their conference in St. Louis, Missouri, where the dominant grape was actually first discovered in Virginia. I'm speaking, of course, about Norton, and today we're at Chrysalis Vineyards, who holds the world's largest planting of Norton grape. And joining me is Jennifer McCloud, proprietor of Chrysalis. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi,
how are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good. So I'm hoping that you can talk to us a little bit about the history of the Norton grape.
Sure. It's named after a fellow named Daniel Norton, Daniel Norborn Norton of Richmond, Virginia, sometime around 1820. That was a period of time in our history where people were doing a lot of hybridizing of beautiful new plants for the new country kind of thing, and they were doing a lot of exploit the lands, not in a negative sense, but from a sense of sort of exploratory. So this guy Daniel Norton, he was a physician, a doctor, a regular doctor, and he was in his backyard at Magnolia Farm experimenting with grapes, and his intention was to try to make a fine dry red table wine from American grapes, and he did it. It's Norton.
How did it get so popular in the Midwest?
Well, there's a couple reasons for that. Probably the most significant reason is in the center of the country, the continental weather, the interior of the continent doesn't allow for European grapes to be grown. Because the cold snaps that can happen. You get those big cold air masses that come down through Canada out of the Arctic, and there could be a huge temperature swing. It could be 55 or 60 degrees for a period of days. The vines can begin to come out of dormancy, begin to start growing, and all of a sudden some huge cold snap with -20 comes in and kills the vines.
So what does that do to the vines in terms of?
Well, that kind of quick temperature change when a vine has begun to start growing basically kills the tissue. Now Norton is cold hardy to -20, 25 degrees Fahrenheit. And because it's a native vine, Norton starts growing later usually than the European vine, so it stays dormant longer. And the other reason is people really liked Norton. And Daniel Norton was friends with William Prince of the Prince Nursery in Flushing, New York. So all of the immigrants coming in to New York Harbor, the Germans primarily, took the Norton into the Midwest because they liked it, and number two, they knew that it would grow. It's the most disease-resistant variety grown for any kind of grape production in the world, whether it's for grapes for wine or grapes for the table or grapes for raisins.
So my understanding is that here at Chrysalis, you have 40+ acres planted in Norton. What
do.
is your interest in Norton? Why are you growing Norton grapes?
Because I really like it. I think it's really different. And I think that the concept of growing a native grape in a region where it actually is native is a real sustainable concept. The story about Norton being native, about Daniel Norton dying young and having a fellow claim that his father had found the grape growing wild and sort of stripped Norton of his honors. It was just kind of an underdog story that really interested me. But all of that aside, if it didn't make good wine, I don't really care. But it does make great wine. It makes wines that age very gracefully for a very long time. And the wine has a very kind of wild, grapey character, and I like that. I like Spanish reds because of the fruity character. It's just a personal preference. And so I thought the idea of coming to Virginia and being involved in the restoration of a native, real gem, because the grape had been world-renowned in the late 1800s, was just a neat mission.
Well, you mentioned that the Norton wines age very well. Why is that?
I don't know. No. Well, we have some theories about it. Okay, the chemistry in Norton is different than the chemistry in vinifera. Vitis vinifera. Vitis is the genus, that's vine. Vinifera is the European version of the vine. Norton is Vitis aestivalis. Its chemical makeup is different. It has higher levels of malic acid than the vinifera. Its acid makeup is different. Acids are important for wine aging. and also antioxidant compounds there's gobs of antioxidant, resveratrol, all those good things that we're hearing about are in very high numbers in Norton, and they can have a tendency to bind up oxygen and keep that oxygen from binding with flavor and other elements, and it just, the wine lasts longer.
Now, we talked a little bit about the drinklocalwines.com conference. Can you explain to us why that's important here in Virginia for the wine industry?
Well, for the simple reason is that you should be drinking wines in your region where you are enjoying your food from. This is a historical fact that goes back for thousands of years, as long as there's been wine. And I always like, when I'm doing a wine tasting and telling people, I said, if we were standing in Bordeaux, boy, you'd be drinking Bordeaux wines. Right? If you were in Burgundy, you'd be drinking Burgundian wines. In fact, in the regions of Europe, they're very provincial. Many people have never even tried wines from outside of their region. Now, we have a lot of choices here, but one of those choices should certainly be supporting local agriculture. There's a reason it's not just a bottle of wine. It's an agricultural product. It fosters the rural economy, it helps the rural economy, and it helps preserve some of these lands to be productive again, instead of just either left fallow or turn into developments.
Well, I understand that we're going to be tasting some Midwestern Nortons and, of course, some of yours here at Chrysalis. So let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, so, geez, I don't know where to start.
Let's start with yours.
Okay,
Let's do that.
well, these wines, I believe the oldest wine on the table, as far as I can tell, is we pulled out a bottle of the Loxley Reserve from 2001. Okay, so Loxley Reserve is our flagship wine at Chrysalis Vineyards. And it is about 80%, as I recall, Norton, and it'll usually have a blend of a little bit of Tannat and some Petit Verdot in it. We do blend a little bit of vinifera into the Loxley Reserve. Not so much for flavor, but for a little bit of mid-palate tannin structure and just a little complexity.
Fantastic.
The next wine we're having is the Chrysalis Vineyards Estate Bottled Norton from 2002. Now, one thing that I noticed when I was smelling through them all a little earlier before tasting them is it definitely has a spicy character to it. And I believe that some of that spice is coming from their Cervidou, which is another European or Vitis vinifera variety that we grow, and has a real nice spicy character. Probably a little bit more ready to drink even than the 2001 Loxley, which is still a young and kind of big wine. Wow, that's kind of nice. I like that.
That's very good.
Okay, so now we're going to move into, those are the wines that we've got from Virginia for right now, since this is at Chrysalis Vineyards. I guess we're trying the Chrysalis Vineyards wines from Virginia. The next wine is Stone Hill. Stone Hill has an important place in Norton history because in the late 1800s, I'm not sure of the exact year, but sometime I think around 1890, it was one of the largest wineries in the world, producing millions of gallons of wine. The grapes that were brought back, the Norton grape vines that were brought back to Virginia because Norton died out in Virginia, had been kept alive at Stone Hill.
Excellent.
So they have the distinction really of being the, they have the distinction of being the mother block for the Nortons. Now, we've planted some Nortons from other locations, but the original Norton that came back at Horton Cellars was from Stone Hill. A kind of a little milder, a little less intense on the Norton fruit. You know, that's a good thing to say about it is that I think Virginia, and I think this location, is one of the absolute best places to grow Norton. Grapes that seem to be planted right at the edge of where they can fully ripen, either in the northern hemisphere as far north as is possible, you know, so you can get them ripe, or in the southern hemisphere as far south as they'll actually ripen, always seem to have the greatest varietal expression, the aromas, the flavors. We get incredible Norton flavor extraction out of our fruit here in Northern Virginia.
Now, is that both because of climate and the soil makeup, or is there a combination of things
Well, there is a combination of things, but it is primarily the climate. As long as soils are well drained and the soils have a nutrient profile that's going to be sufficient for the vine to do its metabolic, functions, it really is mostly the climate. Yeah, but this is nice. This is
There's definitely a distinct difference between what's been grown in the Midwest and what we're tasting here at Chrysalis.
Absolutely, definitely. And Stone Hill is a very high quality producer. I'm always enjoy their wines. The next wine we're going to try is Adam Pukta. It's now still under the management of the Puktas, at least the last time I checked. And Tim Pukta is running the show there. And they also have a reputation for quality Nortons.
That's not as strong bodied as some of the Nortons that we've tasted today.
Yeah, this is a little bit on the more delicate, lighter, I wouldn't want to say thin, but it's a little less intensity.
Even the color is...
And even the color, you're right, it's good that you spotted that as well.
Yeah, the legs on it too. It's interesting.
Okay, so now we're going to try St. James Winery. The Hoffers are the folks that run that winery. St. James is consistently produces quality Norton wines, as well as some other varieties that are popular in Missouri. They're in Missouri. One thing I'm noticing about the Missouri Nortons is they don't seem to have the same intensity as the fruit being grown here in Virginia.
No, not at all. And the oakiness, there was an oakiness to yours that was just very bold, I would say. More so than this one. But this is still very good.
Yeah, this is nice. Anyway.
All right, we have one more.
We have one more. This is Holyfield from Kansas.
Try this one.
Holyfield is run by the Holyfields. I think, no, I'm not quite sure if that's right or not, but I do know that they've crafted some pretty fine Nortons, and we'll see how this is. By the way, these are all wines from about 7, 8, 9, and in the case of the 2001 Loxley Reserve, 10 years old. So enough time to start getting an idea of the character of the Norton. Some of the brashness and youngness of the wines have had a chance to tone down a little bit. I think every one of these wines is certainly drinkable, and Nortons are excellent, where you've got full flavored red meats, game especially, just deer shot off the field here, mixed with Norton, grown off the field. That's the concept of eating food and wine off the same land just really works for me. That's very nice.
Good.
Now I'll tell you why, in my opinion, that there's a wonderful fruitiness. That fruit is still expressing itself. And the wine, I'm sure, is dry, but it almost has like a sweetness in your mouth.
I was just going to say that.
Because of the fruitiness and because of the richness. That's a very nice bottle of wine. And any awards that Holyfield gets for their Kansas Nortons is well deserved, I think. So what about the Drink Local coming up? Isn't there one coming up?
DrinkLocal.com, their third annual conference will be held on April 2nd in St. Louis, Missouri.
Well, I'm sure a lot of Nortons will be enjoyed during the conference.
Absolutely.
I probably should be there. Huh?
You should.
But then that's their local, and this is my local. So we had the conference here.
You're definitely an expert.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, so much for having us today and sharing all your fabulous wines and your knowledge of Norton. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for your interest.
We'll see you next time at Virginia Wine TV.